Reality NSFW Survivor Season 42. We're here tonight talking episode number 6. Can't believe it. Halfway through the season already, pretty much. I am one of your hosts, Lauren Pratt, along with my co-host, Sarah Hart. And tonight we are joined by a very special guest, a friend of mine, all the way from the Philippines. It's Stan C. Stan, how are you?
Hey, Lauren. Hey, Sarah. Thanks so much for having me on. I don't get to talk Survivor a whole lot on podcasts, so it's a real treat for me, even though I have to wake up extra early. Totally fine. All for the love of Survivor.
Yeah, absolutely. What are you thinking of the season so far?
So for some reason I find it hard to connect with all of these characters this season, just because I was binge watching Blood versus Water as an Australian Survivor. So with all of those episodes and all of those players, it's kind of hard to just balance everything all at the same time, especially when you're watching 3 episodes a week. So now that Australian Survivor's done, I'm just kind of catching up with the whole connecting and getting invested in each and every one of these players. And the merge episode is a great way to do that, to be honest.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. It was a very big episode, and I feel like we got a lot from every person. I felt like maybe not as much from some players, but I feel like we're getting a really good feel for who these people are at this point in the game.
Absolutely. And we saw too a lot of the camp life, still seeing those conversations and those bonds and those connections that they were making. Whereas last season when we had this, they split up into a 2-parter. Whereas this one, it was so much more fluid and we went all the way through the entire episode, had the vote off. So we got to see the full picture.
Yeah, that's something I really appreciated this time around, the fact that we actually got everything in a 2-hour package. And it makes me wonder why Survivor hasn't been doing this more often. Like the merge episode to me is incredibly fascinating, because that's when everybody comes together for the very first time. And when you don't have a swap, you have all these people who are meeting the other players for the very first time about 2 weeks into the game. So it's a great move, definitely, that they went for a 2-hour episode instead of leaving it on another cliffhanger, which, when you thought about it from 41, really wasn't much of a cliffhanger, because there was only really one reasonable option there for Erica.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know who wouldn't smash it.
Exactly. Right? Like, who wouldn't? Like, if the idea is for you to be immune, right? Well, why wouldn't you take immunity? Screw what everybody else is going to think and say about, oh, you're being selfish, or, oh, you screwed us over. If anybody was going to get mad, which they were in 41 and which they were in 42 as well for, quite a bit, they should probably just direct their anger at production, which Sydney and Danny did, as it was well documented over the course of 41.
Absolutely. And I think what I thought was better with this episode in particular is there was a clear warning sign, and it was known that the game could change by sending that particular person, whereas in 41 they got none of that information. So I kind of feel I don't necessarily like the hourglass twist. Don't get me wrong, I think it's way too much power, but at the end of the day they still had the knowledge that something could happen that would impact the game.
Yeah, exactly. Right. The transparency was something I appreciated this time around, although I still side with everybody who says that it was still a lie. Like, technically, Jeff was still lying to the players when he said that if you compete in this challenge, you're going to be immune, you get your buff, you get to be part of the merge tribe and all of that stuff. So I think to that extent, it is still a lie. What I really want to know is if anybody was actually outright mad at production this time around, because we saw that the probably the most violent, and I'm using air quotes here, reaction that we got was from Tori when she basically directed all her frustrations on Roxroy.
Yeah, Tori, she is definitely one with facial expressions for sure. And I definitely think that she was somebody who was able to vocalize why she was upset about it, which I think is good to hear. I don't blame any of them. If I won something and then it was taken away from me and I then all of a sudden didn't have that and it affected me, I would be upset. So I get it. I feel like the hourglass twist could be still used, but maybe it could be used in a different way. When I first heard about it, I thought it was going to be changing the game by like stripping everybody of their advantages. And I think that could be a better way to play that.
So many different options. You never know what's going to happen. They throw so many twists to us as viewers. But I will say, even though we jumping around a little bit. But Tori, I enjoy Tori on this season. I think she's very entertaining. Whether she's playing the best game, that's questionable. It's very far off. But at the same time, you need players on the season that are going to be like that. It's entertaining to us as viewers, and she does have a little bit of spice to what she does. I think it's good.
Yeah. So definitely judging from what I've got in the background, I'm a huge fan of professional wrestling, something that's also close to Johnny Fairplay's heart, I'm sure. And in the world where I come from, having a very good and effective villain is the key to make anything compelling, right? So having Tori in the season, having her survive the vote by virtue of being immune, while I was rooting against that outcome, I'm like, all right, in the long run, this is still a good thing. We're only 6-7 episodes in. It's still a great way to keep the season exciting, right? Like having a heel, having a foil for all these other characters that you want to root for. Like I'm rooting for Hai. Gotta root for my fellow Southeast Asian over there. So if I'm going to see Hai be part of the majority and they're targeting the likes of Tori and Chanel, then hell yeah, I want to see one of the heels remain in the game, which is why I'm still generally happy that someone like Tori, who can be an agitator, is still in the game.
For sure. And now that you mentioned Chanel, we haven't really brought her up, but we can go back to where the episode essentially started, right? With the Vati camp, aftermath of that entire vote. And I have like mixed feelings about how I feel about it, because Mike's really upset with Chanel, but Mike also voted for Chanel. So in my opinion, it's kind of, you went for me, I went for you. I don't see a problem with it. Let's just try and figure it out for the future.
Mike, I don't really understand why he was so upset at him, but also Mike, this episode was fantastic. But that part out, he keeps going back and forth with me this whole entire game.
Yeah, Mike strikes me as an old school archetype, or like somebody who really was in the mold of somebody you'd probably be getting from, the OG seasons. And I think the only difference between the OGs and somebody like Mike is the fact that they fleshed him out more as a character, like in the sense that he's shown to be more empathetic, shown to be more emotional, the way he connected with the likes of Omer and Jonathan, right? Like, the stereotype of me is like, I'm a blockhead, or I'm all bronze and no braids and all that stuff. So I guess that's something we didn't get a lot of from the earlier true grit tough guys of Survivor. But in terms of his gameplay, I'm with you, ladies. Like, he is messy in his own way, and it's also hilarious to see him get all hypocritical just because Chanel threw a vote at him when I was going through Chanel's social media. This is a woman who apparently has a history in orgs, so these are simulations that she's probably done over and over again, which is why I figured she thought that was the right move to do, right, to throw a vote at Mike in the case of shot in the dark.
For sure, because you never know what's going to happen in the game. And she was probably spinning so many different scenarios going into that tribal council. Mike is playing messy. Chanel's playing even messier. But I will say Mike's social game right now is impeccable. So I'm excited to see what he does moving forward, because he, in my opinion, went up in my rankings list of someone that has the potential to actually win this season. There's only a few people I think are like off the table to win. And that's, 2 or 3, which going into a merged scenario, that's pretty good with 11 people left in the game, all pretty much having a chance to win this thing.
Yeah, I was wondering how you guys determine that. Like, how can you tell who has a chance of winning? Do you look at the edit? Do you look at how many confessionals they have? Like, what types of confessionals they have? What do you guys normally base it on? Because to me, I base it on how much agency they're portrayed as having in the edit.
Yeah, Sarah, what do you think?
That's a good question. I usually try to view it as another player as well a little bit. Like if I were one of the other people sitting there, or if I was on jury, I try to kind of look at it from that point of view and like who I would want to vote for. And that's kind of how I try to base it. But also, I mean, you can't not look at the edit and take a little consideration of like how that edit is going into play too.
I think what the difference is with this season is other seasons we see them highlight 1 or 2 people so much, where either tells me, yes, they're going to, one of those 2 is going to win the season, or they're going to go out in that stereotypical 6th, 7th, 8th place. Whereas this season, the edit is more so balanced. That's why I'm thinking everyone has an equal chance pretty much to have an opportunity to win this season. The only person I would say, like Lindsay, if I don't see Lindsay doing a couple more things within the next couple episodes, I would kind of also wipe her off the table as a potential winner of the season. I think Tori has a tough road ahead of her, as well as Chanel. And everyone else for me at this point in time, I think depending on what the outcome is in the next couple votes, if they get some agency within the game, they have a chance.
Yeah, speaking of chances, I'm going to quote Spencer Bledsoe here and say, Tori, 0 chance of winning the game. I don't think that's happening. I don't think she has a shot at winning, just based on how messy her gameplay has been, the way she's been rubbing people the wrong way, the way that the majority kind of coalesced at the Vati Beach and said, all right, we're going to pick off Tori and Chanel, like really singling them out. Like when you're on that side of the political spectrum come merge, you know you're in a rough spot in the post-merge.
Now, Tori, though, in particular, love to see her come back on another season because I think she is the type of character that you definitely look for when you are casting somebody.
I think she'll also learn from this season, too, and be able to, she's watching now and be like, ooh, that's where I could maybe edit my game for next time. So when she comes back, I think we'll see better gameplay, too, because I just think she really does have it in her.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's room to grow there. She's, a young woman. She's 24, right? Like you go into a game like Survivor, you go get all this exposure at this age. You're probably not fully fleshed out, not all well-rounded yet. But I want to go back to her interactions with Roxroy, if you don't mind, because there was something I picked up on when she, I would say misdirected her anger at Roxroy. It got uncomfortable when she directed it at Roxroy and said, and I quote, keep in mind, we sent you not just to exile just by yourself. We sent you knowing you had power. So I'm pretty pissed off that ended up happening because I was actually doing that to maybe help you. And to me, it kind of reeked of the whole you should be grateful type of discourse, which the optics really look problematic, with Tori being a white person and Roxroy being a black man. And as a person of color, me just watching that from that lens, I was like, all right, I'm not saying Tori's racist here. I'm not saying that she was fully conscientious in saying what she said. But when you say certain things on TV and you don't take into consideration how it looks, it could come across as problematic, is what I'm saying.
I see what you're saying too. Even when she said that, I did kind of I got just the vibe of just like, ooh, that was kind of a bitchy thing to say.
Yeah.
Like I understand, but at the same time, like, should he really base his decisions off the fact that like, oh, well, I should be grateful that I wasn't just like automatically and that I was chosen. I don't know. If I was him, I'd be like, who the hell are you?
Exactly. Yeah. Like it probably took so much in every fiber of Roxroy's being to hold back and not come right at her right after she said that.
He does stay pretty calm, though. We've seen that throughout the episode. You can tell when he's very frustrated. But he does a very good job of just trying to stay chill. I mean, it even happened earlier on in the episode where Tori was still coming at him, wanting to know what happened on the summit and everything. And he's like, I don't want to talk about it. Just leave me alone. And she kept pestering him just like a little sister. And he's like, I cannot deal with this girl. Why is she not leaving me alone?
Can I just say that was such a poor call on his end to lie about the summit? Because when you take a look at what he went through, right? He goes to the summit with Lydia, doesn't make any bonds with a woman, right? Doesn't pick up an ally, doesn't pick up a friend, keeps his cards close to the vest, goes to the ship wheel itself, and then does the conservative thing and protects his vote. So he doesn't get an ally, he doesn't get an advantage, and then he goes back to camp and lies about it. And I'm like, what is the incentive here to lie about something where you didn't get anything at all? Where when you think about it, the conservative approach is to be upfront and say, I didn't get anything from the summit. So now I kind of understand where Tori's coming from when she says that Roxroy is being sketchy, because it didn't make sense for him to lie about it.
Oh yeah, I totally get the sketchy part. That part I totally get. The grateful piece, no, not so much.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he is being sketchy, 110%, especially because it would be one thing if you were one of the first people to go, but so many people have already gone, and Drea's been there, so you already get information from her, and it's not as though Drea and Roxroy haven't talked about the situation before. So I just find it interesting how people decide to play it, because I think in these type of scenarios, it's just better to come clean, especially going in right before what you could anticipate being the merge.
Yeah, right. I would have expected him to come clean about it as well, just because Roxroy says so himself in the confessionals. I'm a predictable player. So you'd have, you kind of would have felt like he would have been upfront about it. And instead, he does the unpredictable thing and lies about the conservative thing that he did.
I think Roxroy is going to go far on this season. I think that because I think he's the type of person, if you are in his corner and loyal to him, he's going to be pretty loyal to you. And I think that's a good ally to have, especially come the merge time when everyone's trying to make a move. I think he's going to be utilized as somebody's number. I don't see him driving the ship at all in this game, but I do see him being used to help other people get further.
Are we going to see the same thing where the person who smashes the hourglass is the person who gets the finals and aren't taken seriously, and then they end up winning and all of that? I mean, I wouldn't mind it part of my draft, but but I mean, it seems that whole you would think when I first watched last season and I saw the hourglass twist and I'm like, Erica's fucked. There's no way she's going to be doing well. And I know I don't have that same feeling for Roxroy, because part of me does feel like I agree with Lauren. I think that Roxroy will be used in that way because Roxroy wasn't there during all the drama.
That's a great point. That's a great observation, which I didn't necessarily pick up on, but just bring it back to the Erica of it all, right? Like when she broke the hourglass, we barely got any content from her, which really disappointed me, by the way, as a fellow Filipino. I was like, it's not every season that we get a Filipino on the show, and we barely flesh out her backstory. But Roxroy here in this season actually got fleshed out, through 6-7 episodes. And it was funny to me that they spent 5.5 weeks getting us to hate this dude. And then they bring him to Exile Island where he's all on his own. And then suddenly now I feel sorry for the guy because we're made aware of his vision, right? The condition that he has. And I'm like, why couldn't we have had this more well-rounded edit earlier on instead of painting this guy as this one-dimensional, stubborn character who Tori even judges in confessional as a narcissist, which I thought was very unfair.
Yeah, I think it was unfair as well. And the thing about it is now we're seeing all of this about Roxroy, and that's why it's telling me I feel as though they wouldn't share all this information about him if he wasn't going to go far in this season. And if he is sitting at the finals, hey, you never know what can happen. You think one thing going into a final tribal council, and then based on people's performances, they end up picking up the win, or they take their own game where they're not able to articulate to the jury their game style, what they did in the game, and then they end up losing.
Yeah, I'm not sure how he's gonna fare, especially in the modern game. Like, I don't know if you guys are if you guys followed what Adam Klein said a few seasons ago, where the merge vote is so important that you have to always be on the right side of the numbers, because there's like a stat there somewhere where the person who ends up winning the game is more often than not on the right side of the numbers at the merge vote. And I think for all intents and purposes, the Sydney vote in 41 and the Lydia vote here in 42, that's basically the merge vote, right? So you take a look at Roxroy, and he's the one person who casts a vote for Lindsay. And I think the biggest question here is, why does he end up voting for Lindsay? Like, was he, did he mistakenly vote for the wrong person, right? Lindsay, Lydia, he just met these people hours ago. Was he informed was he not informed? Because Omer put this plan together at the very last minute, right before they went to tribal. Was Roxroy just kept in the dark, intentionally or unintentionally? I have so many questions with this one stray vote for Lindsay here.
I think too, we're going to get that hopefully on the next episode to find out indeed where his head, what his thought process was going into that vote. I will crack the hell up though if he meant to write Lydia's name down and just like screwed it up.
Oh,
I would crack up. Only because, as you just said, he didn't have that much time with those people. He didn't know either one of them. Well, I guess he meant Lydia on the summit. But again, we've already talked about it. They really didn't make a connection there. So, the L's, you get that mixed up. I mean, I'm a Lauren, so it's tough sometimes. And, he was stuck on exile for 2 days, not that much food. I mean, I'm cutting the man some slack.
Yeah, Jeff had to interrupt his cooking.
Yeah.
Can I take the? Can we just say I was watching the episode and I think that they edited it in just a way because he was like, "Can I take the rice off?" And then the rice wasn't off the next like little like second, and then like they panned back again and then it was off, and I'm like, "Oh, that was weird editing." But Jeff never gave him an answer, and I felt bad.
Yeah. I just found it so weird how enthusiastic he was about the whole thing. Like, he sees Jeff's boat, right, and he goes, "Yeah, Jeff," and so Jeff had to do his best Jimmy Fallon impression, and go, "Ah, Roxroy," you know what I mean? Like, how over eager Jimmy Fallon is. Like, both of them were channeling Jimmy Fallon in that exchange, and it just tickled me so much.
I am so intrigued to know from both of you who would have the most awkward Jeff interaction had they been the ones sitting on Exile Island. Like from anyone from this cast.
I'm gonna let Sarah go first.
Oh, come on. Out of all the players, the first person that came to my mind was Tori. Just because I felt like her expressions would be, and I feel like I think that she just talks before she thinks. And so I feel like that would happen, and it would be interesting to see what she would say. But what do you think, Stan?
Love it. Classic foot and mouth disease. I was initially going to say Marianne, but I figured, no, I think Jeff loves Marianne. So I'm going to go with Jonathan. Because I think with Jonathan being, the good old Southern boy, the whole Mr. Jeff thing, I think it bothers Jeff on a deep level. And he just tries to be nice about it by saying, still not used to it. Like, how people try to downplay something, but really it pisses them off because, like, it's like Jeff's being reminded that the dude is getting older. The dude is 60 now, right? He doesn't look 60, but he is 60. So, like, when you have somebody like Jonathan, being a considerably younger guy go, "Yeah, Mr. Jeff," I'm like, no, way to remind the guy that he's getting up there in age.
Well, Omer did it at Tribal Council. Was like, "Yeah, I just hit 30," and Jeff's like, all right. Next
yeah,
topic.
Right? Like, we're all now in our later days. Like, after you hit 30, we're now like Heather in our later days.
Oh, poor Jeff. I never picked up on that, so I'm glad you brought that up. I actually was under the impression that Jeff is like in love with Jonathan, because not really, but in the sense of he loves those players, those like big players that just are able to do everything. And I mean, there's not a lot Jonathan's not able to do. And I think Jeff absolutely loves that. I actually recently saw a meme about Jeff being in love with Jonathan. So I don't know. Maybe that's where I got my info from.
Yeah, but he's no Boston Rob.
That's true. But he's kind of a mystical beast.
He's also in the Kobe mold, right? Like, you go back to Kobe's original season, they're kind of in the same archetype, like big, strong guy, always dominating these challenges. And, the Southern flair of it all, Kobe being from Texas and Jonathan being from Alabama. I hope I'm getting my U.S. geography right, because I've never been to either of those states.
I don't know, but I also think that Jonathan is almost in his own category, because not that Jonathan just, did really well at challenges. He's pretty much done the tribe physical challenges as an immunity challenge. Like, I don't think anyone beat him, honestly. And like, I don't know. He's just all powerful.
Yeah, not in the physicality component. I don't think anyone can beat him, especially with this cast. Now, on a different season, I think a couple of people could potentially give him a run for his money. Still, I think he wins, but at the same time, this cast in particular is a little bit more on the weaker side. We've talked about it before. When the tribes were made, I was saying to myself, Lindsay, in my opinion, is probably the strongest girl out there. So you put Lindsay and Jonathan together, that makes no sense to me whatsoever. But hey, I don't pick the tribes. So with that, do y'all want to talk about this challenge that we had? Because we all knew any group that was going to be with Jonathan was probably going to win this thing, because he could just haul ass and get everyone up to where they needed to be. And if you had the wrong puzzle people, maybe you lose. But other than that, Jonathan basically carried them.
Yeah, so this last challenge was basically a rehash of 41, right? Like the same lie that both casts were told, same challenge. And all I'll say was, it was kind of pointless having to go through that challenge. Like, the moment I saw it, I was like, oh boy, here we go again. Like, these guys are going to kill themselves pushing and pulling this boulder over all these obstacles for nothing. for essentially a ticket to the immunity challenge where they're going to stress themselves out. And somebody like Lydia, I felt so sorry for her because she shows up to the following challenge without her glasses, clearly not in the mindset to compete, all because she didn't even know she was competing to lose in the first place. I hated that challenge, the whole boulder thing.
The commentary on the sidelines was interesting. Like, just hearing Lindsay go back and forth with Roxroy, just the fascination. I'm glad that they do show us sometimes people that are on the sit-out bench, their thought process while the challenge is happening, because I think it gives us as a viewer a little insight to what they're thinking of what's going on. Because if I'm one of them, I'd be very upset that I'm not participating, because you don't know what your fate is going to be. They have no idea what's going to happen after that challenge concludes. And I want to see on a future season too, maybe if that's a type of scenario where there are sit-outs like that, I want to see if a little bit of strategy talk ends up like occurring as well.
Yeah, that stuff happens on Australian Survivor, right? Like they cut to the strategy talk for about a minute or two. We don't really get that a whole lot in American Survivor, probably just because of the time constraints of it all. And it's kind of disappointing that they don't. And you're right about the commentary, Lauren, because now I want to see Jeff and the sit-outs like have their own booth, kind of like in wrestling where they're doing commentary on the challenges and Jeff's doing play-by-play, and somebody like Lindsay or Roxroy are giving color commentary like, oh yeah, this Jonathan's a beast, holy snakes.
That would be really fun.
Yeah, like I said, you never know how it can evolve. They've made changes, so many of them in past seasons, so we just have to wait and see what they have up their sleeve next.
Yeah, totally. It's so like just going back to the whole challenge, right? You see these two teams get divided, and it's so weird to me how you're in the Drea and Mike team, and you think you have any shot of winning. Like, I'm gonna ask you two here: if you're on that team, the team that's going up against Jonathan, what do you do? Assuming you don't know that the hourglass twist is coming, right? Like, you don't have somebody like Drea who's gonna predict that right on the spot.
I don't know. I think at that point, because I'd be so tired, so hungry, just drained, that I'd probably be like, why am I even going to try?
I'm such a competitor. I would 100% give it my all and just say, well, hopefully no one over there knows how to do a puzzle. Like, that's essentially your only hope. Because at least give them credit. They made it all the way up to the puzzle, and say the other group was terrible and had no puzzle people on their side. They still have a chance to win. A puzzle is always an equalizer, but not when you have someone like Jonathan that just gets them there as fast as he did in that challenge.
Oh, well, wait, hold on. Actually, there was a food reward in this one. They haven't had that. Yeah. So I'm going to change my answer to I would have tried very hard.
You guys love Applebee's?
No.
Like Jeff really made a big deal out of the first change is we're gonna have Applebee's, right? And I was like, all right.
No, Applebee's isn't that great. But I mean, if I haven't eaten in that long, anything's looking great. So I'd be so excited for Applebee's.
But they've had Outback before. Could you just do Outback, please? If you're gonna bring in a chain restaurant here, do we really need to see Applebee's? I mean, I know Karishma would be all over that. Like, seriously, though. However, Mike, though, had the same amount of excitement as Karishma, essentially, in my opinion, regarding the Applebee's. But bring me some Outback. I don't need the Applebee's bone-in crunch wings, however Jeff described them, the onion rings, the burger. Applebee's, you want a steak, a baked potato. That sounds way better to me. I don't need a shark bowl.
Yeah, Mike really earned his airtime right there by just popping for the whole Applebee's thing. I think everyone as well, like Tori doing that little shimmy when they were talking about the Shark Bowl, right? So like that cracked me up. And I don't know, like I get what you're saying, Sarah, right? Like you're super hungry, you want to get a bit of the food. I just think that if Survivor's gonna get all that money to stay on the air, I don't care if it's Applebee's or Outback or Chili's or Olive Garden, bring in the sponsorship money. I don't care. Just like probably reorder the way that Jeff broke the fourth wall, and I'd probably put Applebee's last. You know what I mean? Because like if I'm the viewer, I'm not necessarily watching it emaciated like the rest of the cast is. Mm-hmm. Like I want to know what twists you're going to throw at them and how you're going to execute it this time around if you think that it's different. And I want to call attention to the way he mentioned S42. Like, nobody, he's never referred to a season in the past as S41, S42, and it sounds like something that people on Survivor Reddit would do, right? Like when you're typing really quickly, like instead of saying David versus Goliath, you'd be like S37, or instead of saying Micronesia, S16. And to me, that made Jeff come across as like this hip dad who's trying to get hip with the internet crowd. Like, hey, S42. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean now. He just turned 60. He is trying to hold on to all the youth that he can.
I mean, he looks great for 60. So, I mean, honestly, props to you, my man. Not many people look that way when they're 60 years old. So, hey, anything that Jeff wants to do to like make himself sound cooler, I'm there for the effort. It just might not be executed the best.
Yeah, it kind of fell flat for me because it was so jarring, right? I mean, it's jarring enough that he's broken the fourth wall over the last couple of seasons to talk to us directly. But for him to actually take something that the internet uses to communicate with one another and be like, yeah, I'm hip with you guys, S42. It was so jarring. I swear to God.
Well, he was excited about, remember last season when they had the game within the game or whatever? They don't have that shit this season. So I want to know how they decided to take that away. Not that I was intrigued by it or anything, but at the same time, it's kind of interesting to see what they take away from 41, what they add into 42, even though they're relatively kind of the same. We're watching the same thing essentially back to back with just a little tweak here and there.
Yeah. I was going to say, sorry.
No, please go ahead.
I was just going to say they probably took away the game within the game, used that money, and got Applebee's.
What I was going to say was Jeff loves to say that he likes to keep his pulse on what the man on the street says, right? Like back in the days of the reunions, he would say, I've been asking people, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And all that stuff. And the way that he tried to tell everybody that the hourglass twist was so fascinating and so incredible last season that it led to the winner getting to where they are. It kind of said to me that Jeff really is still lacking a bit of self-awareness in the sense that he wasn't sure how this hourglass twist was going to be perceived. I mean, when you had someone like Sydney, who's relatively a fan of the show, someone like Danny, who's relatively a fan of the show, low-key causing a rebellion because of that hourglass twist, you would have thought he would have sat down with the rest of production to think, maybe this hourglass twist isn't going to go over so well. Instead, they go right back and do 42, do a brand steal with basically the same stuff and just tweak it a tiny bit just to give a little bit of transparency, just to say, all right, we changed it a bit. You happy now? To me, it feels like they should have workshopped that by waiting for 41 to air and doing something different with 42.
I'm going to be intrigued if they actually bring back the hourglass twist ever again, because I think it could come with some interesting gameplay there. Because if they essentially know what it is, then you have the strategy. Okay, who am I going to send there? Am I going to try really hard in the challenge? How am I going to go about this? Because then it's a little bit of risk reward there. And I think that could definitely change the game for sure if they know exactly what could happen with it. Do I want to see it again? No, not necessarily. But if everyone is aware with what's going to happen with it, it's going to be interesting to see everyone's thought process in making a decision on who to send.
I'm never going to be in a beach in Fiji playing Survivor, but I think the two of you have a chance of doing that at least once in your lifetime. So let's say either of you land yourselves in Fiji and the hourglass twist shows up in, say, season 45 or 46. What do you do?
Well, if I'm being sent, of course, I'm smashing it. But you want to almost be like very strategic with it in the sense of hopefully be on the losing team and a person that's going is definitely going to smash it because then it reverses, or being on the winning team and sending one of your own to keep it the same and therefore making you safe and then them having all the powers. Like I said, it's just going to be so interesting if they do bring it back because you never know what people are going to be thinking. And depending on what the food is, I mean, if it's an Applebee's, some people would say, you know what, I got to have my Applebee's. But if it's an Outback, you just don't know.
I don't know what I would do in that situation just because, well, there's so many little luck factors that come in where your tribes get drawn and who gets the rocks, you just don't know where that's going to sit. But if I'm sitting on the tribe that won, for example, I would try to send an ally probably. As hard as that would be, probably try to maybe get my closest ally probably to go. But if I'm one of the people, yeah, I'm smashing that glass. And then if I'm on, but to be honest, if I knew it was happening, I might go into the challenge and not try. And I think it would be funny to see, because I feel like you win by losing, and it would be really interesting to like watch that happen and see if people actually like tried to purposely lose. I don't know. That'd be kind of funny.
No, it's totally funny. And I think there's a circle in hell for people like you and me, Sarah, where we enjoy people just doing the worst possible thing they could do on the show. And I think that's something that production doesn't want to happen, which is why if I were a betting man, I'm going to bet on the hourglass twist being dead ski. Done. We're never seeing it again. Because if someone like either of you ends up on a beach in Fiji one day and you know what's coming, you're going to do everything in your power to lose that challenge, which is bad for television. And if you know, to smash the hourglass, because it's the only logical game choice, right? Then where's the suspense in that? Where's the drama? So I think now that we all know the dynamics of the hourglass twist and the lie that they disguise as a challenge, we're never going to see it again.
Yeah. So how much do you think they have to pry them to make a confessional saying, you know what, I'm thinking about maybe not smashing this thing. I'm thinking really hard. There's definitely, a 50-50 shot. I'll smash it or I won't smash it. Because for me, it'd be a no-brainer. I would go straight to the confessional and be like, I'm smashing the bitch now. Like there's no dilemma.
I would have laughed so hard if Jeff came over to the Roxroy shelter, and he'd be like, "Hey, where'd you put that hourglass?" And Roxroy's like, "Oh, I smashed it yesterday, bro. What was that?" And he'd be like, "What the fuck?" Funny.
I was actually thinking that while watching it, while he gets on the beach and he's like, "What's this?" And I would have laughed if he was just like, "Oh, what's this?" And just like throws it against the rock, and that was it. And then just cuts the commercial.
Just the epic. That's all we need to see. Or it would have been last season where we would have gotten the cliffhanger. All right, end of the episode. We'll get back to you in another week now.
Yeah, cue the Curb Your Enthusiasm credits.
I was actually at an NSFW viewing party for that. So it was a weird episode to have a viewing party at where it was like a cliffhanger.
How do you guys process that? Like, what was the feeling or the reaction in the room after that cliffhanger?
I don't even remember. I think I blocked it out.
You're like,
I'm just jealous.
I'll just take another alcoholic beverage. It's fine. And whatever. What was that episode? We have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm just jealous you guys get to do viewing parties in the first place again, because it's been a while since we've had one here in the Philippines, with all the COVID restrictions and all that. So like, good for you guys.
Well, you'll just have to come travel here and come to one.
Yeah, so I've been listening to Johnny plugging the viewing parties over the next couple of weeks, and I'm like, one of these days I'm going to have to find my way in the U.S. when there's a season actually airing. Quick funny story, I actually missed a viewing party in the U.S. by just a few weeks. Like, I was in the same city, in the same state.
Oh, wow.
I just missed it. I just missed an RHAP viewing party by like a few weeks. So
wow.
That's as close as I ever got.
See, next time, timing is everything, as it is in Survivor. So hopefully at one point in time, you will definitely be over here and get to go to one. They're a lot of fun. They're a great time.
Yes.
I'm going to take your word for it. I mentioned Curb Your Enthusiasm earlier, and I wanted to bring up another show that's close to my heart in The Office, because I don't know if you noticed that they had this one confessional where Romeo was whining about Mike being being such a fanboy of Jonathan, and then they were cutting to a scene of Mike just really talking Jonathan up, and then the camera swings over at Romeo, and he's almost doing the Jim Halpert there. And it was taken straight out of The Office's editing playbook, which was based on Survivor's editing playbook, right? Because several of their camera operators from back in the day came from Survivor. So just seeing that come full circle for me as a fan of both shows, I just found that so hilarious.
Oh, that's really awesome. I didn't actually know that about The Office and Survivor. So that's interesting.
Yeah, Romeo too is someone that I'm a little nervous for after seeing this episode, because he comes across to me as wanting a little bit more power than he ended up getting in comparison to this last vote, because Omar really stepped up, sees the power, where I think Romeo wants to drive the bus. Romeo does not want to sit back. He wants to be in charge. And I do think Romeo has the capability to do that, but skipping way far ahead in the preview for next time, I think some people have their eyes on Romeo as, knowing that he can scheme and play a potential good game.
I was so surprised that he was left out of the majority that came together at the merge. Like, I would have thought that since he was so tight with Drea, that when Drea was part of that Power Players Alliance, they would bring Romeo in, or she would have brought Romeo in, but she didn't. And it was so weird that it was never vocalized that Romeo was part of it. So I want to know what happened between the pre-merge, where Drea and Romeo were this tight, and what we have now, where Romeo is one of the people casting a vote for Marianne, basically along with a minority here. Like, I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I think, and that's the thing we're going to run into. We're going to go back to regular 42-minute episodes and probably not get all the backstory that we want to with the aftermath of that vote, because I think there is a lot to break down, wanting to know which side people were on, why they landed on that side, and if they were clued in on it and were just told to throw a couple votes here and there to essentially save themselves if it backfired in a different direction.
Yeah, it's so odd. I was thinking about this Power Players Alliance, right? People like Jonathan, who's considered a power player. People like Kai, who considered a power player. And then the people with the trinkets like Drea, Marianne, who's kind of on the outs of that majority, but still kind of is within that majority. Who else has the trinkets? Mike. Mike's got an idol, right? As a viewer, I don't like having all these power players come together because it really makes a quick meal out of the people outside of that majority. But as a player, you kind of want to be part of that alliance, right? Because you want to maximize all the shields around you. Like, you go back to something Hai said, where given this cast, he's one of the physical players. Of course, it's in his best interest to keep Jonathan around because that's still a meat shield for him. So what do you ladies think of the Power Players Alliance? Is that something you're interested in watching and seeing how it plays out? Or do you not like that the way that people hated on the Bros Alliance from Australian Survivor this year?
I don't hate it because I don't think it's necessarily going to last. And I think when you factor in the amulet piece to this, someone's going to get greedy. Someone's going to make a move and take one of those, maybe not just one, but two people out in order to get that idol. Because what we see in this episode is they all have to come together to make it one singular thing. That to me is not an advantage because you all have to be on the same page with it. An advantage to me is get rid of the other two people, have something of your own, which in turn, no one else in this game knows about. Everyone knows about where the idols are in this game. People have no idea where these things are because Drea has been very vocal about her extra vote, but she got that extra vote on the summit. People don't know that she has this amulet thing, not even Romeo, to our knowledge.
Yeah, I don't think anybody knows about those. So it will be really interesting to see how that plays out. And I agree with you, Lauren. I don't necessarily think that all these power players are really going to stick together because I think they're eventually going to be like, oh, wait, I'm not going to be able to beat this person. I'm not going to be able to beat, and they're going to use the other people. Hopefully they see that or else they're going to be kind of screwed. But I don't know. I think I agree with you, Stan, as a viewer, it's not as exciting. I mean, who doesn't love an underdog? Who doesn't love to watch those players really try for things and watch that? And it's hard to watch that when a big alliance is just kind of taking them all out. But if I were playing the game, I would 100% want to be with those people. Make sure those aren't being used against me.
You know what's really weird about this situation? Because now I'm getting flashbacks of Cambodia, right? Where there was another big chunk of 9 against the Witches' Coven, right? Like, say what you want to say about Abby and Sierra, but people loved Kelly Wentworth. So if there was an underdog that people really rooted for, it was Kelly Wentworth in that season, right? But you go to 42 and you see this big majority of players that people generally love. Your Jonathan, your Hai, Mike. And then who's in the minority? Chanel, who's really being portrayed as sketchy as fuck. Tori, villain of the season. Not exactly the people you want to root for. So it's kind of weird, right? How the supposed underdogs are also the people who the edit makes out to be the villains of the season.
Interesting. That's a good point.
Well, I'm just hoping for something crazy to happen, and the two apparently on the bottom right now get some agency within the game, flip it around a little bit. I think that's what makes it fun. This season, to me, is not going to be predictable at all. Some seasons you go into the merge and you say, all right, I have a pretty much of a good idea. These 6 or 7 people are going to make it pretty far into the game. Whereas this one, we've talked about a little bit earlier, most of the people have a chance to do something, and everyone's a gamer. I will say that. Even though Tori, yes, she is being portrayed as the villain right now, that girl's going to scrap and claw to get as far as she can in this game. She's not going to let anyone just take her out easily. Same with Chanel, because Chanel's been part of the org community, and you can see how it happens in the org community in games as well. You can turn it around and be sitting at the end because other people decided they want to do crazy moves, and then you can pitch easily to the jury and say, you all wanted me out. Guess what? I'm here. I had to do these specific things to get myself to the end.
Mm-hmm. The other thing interesting too about that is, Tori's also a sequester player. So it's interesting to see that, we're talking we've kind of put them in a little dish, I guess you could say, of being the villains. And they're also both org people. So it is really interesting to see, because I do believe after playing my own in-person game, being able to see the difference between the in-person piece and the org piece. People are more willing to make big villainous moves in orgs than they are usually in real life. So it's interesting to see that play out in real life and how it's being perceived by other players, but also just how it's playing out in general.
I want to know what you think about org players finally getting their shot at, the actual game of Survivor and how they're being portrayed. Because there was a time in the show's history when the show was, whether they were conscious about it or not, really dunking on superfans. I think of someone like Jacob Derwin, and I think the show really went out of its way to kind of dunk on him. Or maybe even Dan Foley, right? Dan was a huge super fan. Granted, he said some problematic things in Worlds Apart as well, but he really got dunked on. So you have a little bit of evidence here in the show's history where they go out of their way to dunk on superfans. And now I'm wondering if that's the same approach that's being taken towards org players. Kind of like how, oh, you think you know how to play the game? Oh no, the game's going to play you, right? Look at what's happening to Tori. Look at what's happening to Chanel. I don't know if that's a conscientious effort on their part. Or am I overthinking it?
I mean, maybe, but I never really would have thought about it that way. So that is an interesting way. I mean, there's a lot of players in the past who've also been in orgs and done many. So that, I don't know, I'd have to really think about that and have to see it play out more or know more about what people's online experiences maybe for next season, and just I'm going to have to pay attention now. So thank you for bringing that up.
Having to pay a little bit more attention there.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, think about this too. When they're, in my eyes, obviously I have no idea, when they're casting, they're not necessarily picking all 18 people thinking that all of those 18 people have a shot to win. You're picking, all right, there's going to be specific characters on the season. Doubt they have any chance to win, but they're going to give me great television. So it's essentially a balance there. I mean, sitting in that room, I guarantee they're not saying, I'm pretty sure Daniel has a shot to win this game. But by God, Daniel is going to give me the television component that I want to see. And, the viewers are going to say, wow, he did this one week. Oh, wasn't expecting that. And just blow your mind.
Yeah, it would blow my mind if they cast somebody for the specific purpose of having them create chaos on TV or just being a great character, and that person ends up winning. Because that's what happened in Tom's season in Survivor South Africa. They cast this guy who's really volatile, would get on other people's nerves, and cut to the end, the dude takes home the win in a landslide final tribal. And I don't know if we've ever seen that in American Survivor. Is Tony the closest comp here?
I wouldn't even see. That's my thing about Tony. He was, yes, casting. When you say that, it's home run to cast Tony. Of course, he's going to be energetic. He's going to be entertaining. But at the same time, you can also see all those strategic components that he has and the mindset that he has for the game as well. Because the fact that he was able to essentially shit the bed in Game Changers and then come back and win Winners at War, that tells you about how good of a player he is.
Yeah, it does. But I look back at his history, right? And he didn't play a great strategic game in Cagayan. I'm just going to put it out there. I don't think it was a top tier strategic game. His Winners at War game, though, impeccable. But Cagayan, not so much. So just to take it back to 42, I don't know if like any of these players were specifically cast just to be great TV, and I would probably just have a great time laughing if one of them, like if Tori goes out and wins Survivor 42, I would just be laughing my ass off at the end of it.
I would love it if Tori wins the season. Well, first of all, we did a draft, and the draft, she was my first pick in the draft, and I said, Tori, hands down, huge chance to win this season. I think she's going to do fantastic. Watch episode number 1, I go, okay, I'm going to take a step back. But again, I think that would be amazing to see Tori get the win. Because it's so unexpected. At this point, everyone's writing her off that she has no chance to win the season. And if she's able to turn something around, maybe making it to the end, some people are going to respect that and say, had no recollection of you even having a chance to get to this spot in the end, let alone we wrote you off so many votes ago, but you got here. And if she's able to pitch herself to a jury, maybe she has a chance. I don't know.
Yeah, or maybe a character like, I don't know, Roxroy, right? Or Marianne. Like, you have all these characters who are just really great TV, but just aren't being presented as these super strategic threats. And I don't know, Erica was actually pretty strategic, right? Like when you listen to her postseason press. So when you think about her, it's not like she necessarily came out of nowhere. It's just that the edit really hit her the fuck out of whatever we got to see from 41.
That's the thing too. I think the edit right now, as we've said, we've seen enough of everyone where if they do get the win, it's not going to be, oh, they came out of nowhere. I mean, obviously we have more episodes, so we're going to see how it progresses. But in the pre-merge, the difference in this season is they came in 4-4-4, whereas last season we saw basically just one singular camp, that entire story. We didn't see the other two camps' stories that much.
Right. I want to ask you guys about your thoughts on Hai just giving Lydia up, basically, because I've been listening to different podcasts and takes, and I was wondering if what Omer did was a last minute thing because he just got Hai to agree without really offering an alternative from his point of view. I mean, in confessional, he said, "No way, I'm going to give up Lydia." Cut to tribal. Hai's holding up a Lydia vote, which is stone cold, and while it wasn't an optimal result, I actually thought Hai did the correct thing here.
I agree. I think he fought for Lydia that one time so hard, and to continue, they're just going to look like a duo, and it's not going to look good for him. And if she's already on the bottom, and it's, it gets to the point, merge is so different than tribe, and sometimes you really have to, it's not an online game. It is $4 million, so you want to win, and you got to make those moves. So I do think he made the smart decision.
What stands out to me is this one singular thing. We see it many a times. You fight so hard to save an ally, and you should, if you want to keep your ally in the game, say reasonings, oh, I think they're useful for us to keep them around. But if you fight really hard, they could just say, you know what? They're fighting way too hard to keep this person. Let's get rid of them instead of that person. And I think Hai is someone that could recognize that and say, you know what? The vote could get flipped on me if I try way, way too hard to try and save her in this aspect.
Yeah, see, I'm reminded of Jeremy in Cambodia, where he fought to keep Steven, right, with the idol at the final 10, and then cut the final 9. Steven gets voted out anyway because Spencer was really trying hard to get Fishback out there. And I thought it was in Jeremy's best interests to just let Fishback go at final 9. In Hai's case here at final 12, where he gets rid of his number 1, I'm not sure if he's already forged a deep enough connection with Mike where Mike has supplanted Lydia effectively. But I'm going to agree with what you said, Sarah, where Hai basically did what he did to decrease his threat level, because now people aren't looking at Hai as he has a clear number 1 in Lydia. Maybe we can target someone else's number 1 or someone else and not target the Vati people.
And they know that he was willing to go to rocks for Lydia within this game. So the longer you keep Lydia around in the game, they're going to say to themselves, you know what, they are for sure a tight duo. But the fact that he was willing to give her up in this situation, now he really didn't have a choice. If that many people are on the train, essentially you have to just roll along with it. If the numbers were a bit smaller, I think he could have had more of a say. But again, we don't know how much time they had to strategize before this vote, because I'm just seeing the way Omer going to people very subtly and saying, you know what, let's shift it this way. I think this is a better move and everything. We don't know how much time they had to strategize.
Yeah, this is the incredibly fascinating thing about the 4-4-4 merge, where everybody doesn't really have like, or they're not ganging up on one specific tribe the way that they did in Heroes, Healers, Hustlers against the Healers tribe, right? Like there weren't two tribes that came against or that went up against 1-4 directly. So I was thinking about that possibility of High rounding up the numbers at the bottom, the Romeos, Marianne, Tori and Chanel, and try to see if they can win by plurality and try to get someone else so they could keep Lydia. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that he could have won the battle at 12, but ultimately lost the war because he would have found himself out of the majority. Like when Omer said, Lydia's already targeting the 8, let's take her out. They could say the same thing about High at 11 if he did what I just said, which is gather up the minority right there at 12.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I totally agree. I think all in all, it was an interesting way the vote happened. And like Lauren said, we don't know how much time they had. So we don't know if they had, who knows? I don't even know. I don't even know how to guess how much time they possibly had, but they had some time, and maybe not a lot. And it was very interesting. It almost felt like Omar kind of came out of nowhere, but I understood why he did that. But I was sad because, they're both by draft, so I didn't know who to fight for in this situation. And I was really sad that I wanted to see more of Lydia, and I was disappointed. I feel like if anybody, she got like the worst edit, kind of, because I feel like she wasn't shown as much. But so disappointed. I really wanted to see more from her because I was like, she's a comedy writer. I loved her like intro video. I really was expecting to see a little bit more of that part of Lydia that I don't think we really were shown.
She's rocking it on Twitter though, so
She does.
Girl has it going right now. So anyone that's not checking out Lydia on Twitter, you are missing out so much. So many funny one-liners. So at least she gets that from this. And overall, just I listened to her exit interview. She had a great time being part of it. And at the end of the day, not everyone's gonna win. But I think she gave it her all and did everything that you could. And, sometimes it just doesn't work out in your favor. And that's the thing with the twist within the game. You just don't know what's going to happen. And it changes so rapidly. You could be on the bottom one day, at the top the next, and then right back down to the bottom, just how the vote shifts.
Yeah, best Twitter follow right there from the season. Lydia Chlamydia, right? That's what she calls herself on Twitter. I've been curious about why people have been praising Omer's move so much, because I'm not going to dispute the fact that it was the best move of the episode, but the way I see it, I think Omer was only really incentivized to do what he did against Lydia because he was immune. Because people are saying oh, he had no vote, but he was able to drive all the votes towards Lydia and get the result he wanted, so he gets all the credit in the world, which is fine. He was immune. Because let's say Omer isn't immune. Let's say the hourglass twist doesn't happen. Omer doesn't get to scramble the way he does. He's going to shut the hell up and be like the Homer Simpson meme of blending with the grassy wall thing, right? So I think his immunity was such a huge part in it, which people kind of forget.
You're absolutely right. Being immune is a huge bargaining chip within the game, and it's not talked about enough because some of the biggest moves that we have seen on Survivor have been when that person wins individual immunity because they said, you know what, I can take that risk, take that shot, talk to the people I want to talk to because they can't flip the vote on me, therefore targeting me.
Right? Just look as recently as Tony in Winners at War, right? At the final 9, goes out and wins immunity, gets all the gumption to get the fire tokens from Ben and Nick and Jeremy, and then at the very last minute organizes the hit on Sophie on a 4-3-2 plurality. I don't think he does that if he doesn't have immunity around his neck. And it's the same thing with Omer here, where he was really emboldened by the fact that he knew he was safe. So even if he didn't have the vote, if it fucked up, Marianne was going to take the hit, and he could just tell her to play her idol.
Yeah, potentially that he could have done even a more interesting move, even because he could have used that idol maybe to his advantage and maybe made it, I don't know, been maybe not a singular vote, but maybe a couple vote.
I'm surprised that Marianne actually did not play her idol because she comes across as a player to me who she's young. So she might have that little bit of paranoia that says, I can't save it. Because she is someone that wants to make that jury so bad that next stage of the game. And when they found out, all right, I'm not going to make the jury if I get voted out on this round. So I'm stunned she did not play it, because going into that tribal, I said, if anyone is going to play something, it would be Marianne, because Marianne wants to get to that next point within the game.
No, I think she kind of did get an assist from Omer right there, right? Because Omer's even keeled. He's wise. He's in his later years. So he knew to tell Marianne to keep it chill and don't play your idol. And it stood out to me when Omer said in confessional that he wants to build his army. He needs his arsenal of trinkets that he can use to his advantage. So he kind of looks at Marianne as a tool with the trinkets, which I thought was pretty funny and pretty cunning of him to do. So hearing that confessional from Omer, right, and hearing this confessional from Hai, where he wants to have his own agency, which he says in multiple confessionals, and then hearing Romeo talk about being power hungry and he wants to wrest control from the tribe. What are the chances that we're going to get a 3-way power struggle between those 3 men?
I think there's a pretty big chance.
I'm here for it. I love seeing a power struggle because it makes it so interesting, because we get sometimes where it's just 1 or 2 people have all the dominating pieces. And when you have 3 people, then you're tugging and pulling in different directions, trying to garner like other people to come on your side, and they could be getting pulled to go with that other group as well. Because if there's 3 groups, that just creates so much more chaos.
Yeah, right? Like it's some Game of Thrones political shit where which 2 of them would align together just to take out the other one, kind of like the advantage amulet situation, which I don't know. I don't know if I'm reading into these confessionals too much, but there has to be something there about the fact that they're highlighting these 3 players and how they really want the agency. And notice how they're all from different tribes, right? Omer, Hai, and Romeo, all wanting that power. So we've seen in the past where players go up against each other and go head to head, and usually they go out one right after the other. Look at Zeke and David from Millennials versus Gen X. Neither of them won the game, even though they went out rounds apart. Josh and Jeremy, who went out back to back in San Juan del Sur. But when you have 3 people all with their own different agendas, I don't think we've seen this in Survivor, have we? Like 3 different players all with their own thing?
Not that I can recall, because as I said, I think it's normally one side versus the other side, or, in a Kim Spradlin situation, one singular person just dominating the entire field.
Interesting. So, Stan, I have to know, out of this whole season, who would be your winner pick right now? Or who do you think is like the person to win?
I don't know. I'm going to come in biased here because Hai is my episode 1 winner pick, right? And I liked what I saw from him in the preseason, and I was like, he's from Southeast Asia. I live in Southeast Asia. I got to root for my fellow Southeast Asian. So that right there already makes me very, very biased. But I like what I'm seeing from him still. Like him saying that he wants the agency means that he's well aware of his political positioning. Him looking at Jonathan as his meat shield and him being incentivized to keep Jonathan around at the cost of Lydia down the road, and making these inroads with a Romeo, with a Mike, with a Jonathan, with a Drea. It kind of makes me feel comfortable in my winner pick right here.
And I don't think you're biased by saying that, because essentially what we've seen, the progression of Hai throughout the season, Hai has had the experience of being on the bottom and finding a way to rework to get himself on the top. And so if you haven't had that experience playing from the bottom at any point in time and always being a top person, and then if something goes wrong, knowing how to get yourself off of that bottom could be problematic, and you could be sent packing and sent home. Whereas Hai has already had that chance where he's saying, I was not in the correct position that I want to be. How do I flip that to get me in a power position?
I mean, Hai was on the bottom of the Vadi tribe, right? Like he was supposed to go next right after Lydia at the Jenny booth. And the way that he managed to flip the script on Vati, flip Mike over to his side, have Lydia have the majority against Daniel and Chanel, already tells me that Hai does know how to sneak his way around the power dynamics of whatever situation he's in. And I don't think the people in this merge group know that Hai is capable of that necessarily.
I would agree with you.
So I want to ask both of you this question. Going into the next episode, we realistically think that Tori and Chanel are on the bottom, probably. Do we actually think that they're going home, though? Is one of the two of those going home for sure on this next episode, or is someone going to shake it up? Or are we going to see, yeah, let's do one easy vote, and then we can make a move on the next one?
I'm going to defer to Sarah here because it's ladies' night, so ladies first.
Of course. See, I can see it playing out so many ways. I don't know. I think they're too predictable to go home. So I'm going to go with that. I don't think they're going to go home next episode.
I'm going to predict that the majority sticks together for like 1 or 2 more votes, and then all hell breaks loose. So I'm probably going to pick Chanel as the next boot, just because I want to see Tori create more chaos here. The Tori Roxroy story, I think, still has a bit more legs to be told before they wrap it up.
I will be upset if Tori goes on this next vote because, as you said, I think she has a lot more that she can offer this season. And, you know, you just never know what she's going to do or what she's going to say. And that's what makes great television. What makes me sad, though, is I think a lot of people as viewers are very down on Tori. And I hate when players on seasons get hate for just being themselves, and she's playing a game. She's not doing anything wrong. She's not being hurtful to anyone out there on the season. And so I think people just have to remember these are people playing a game, and we're also seeing a small snippet of what their game is. She's could have done some great things that we haven't seen, but they're choosing to show this storyline of Tori. And I hope she gets that just a little bit of a piece of me wants to see her get that bright spot at some point within the season. Because correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't seen any flashback of Tori in her life thus far. So I think that piece is coming somewhere.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Like, I don't know if you guys watched Once Upon an Island and where they track a player's progression through a season, how many positive confessionals and negative confessionals they have, and how they come across as heroic or as villainous at the end of the edit. If you take a look at Tori's edit to date, I don't think we've had like one positive confessional about the woman at all, which really does tell me that she's the clear-cut villain of the season. But some of the chatter I've seen on social media, and I don't know if either of you have seen it, is people would say things like, I'm not sure if I want Tori as my therapist if she's this messy. And I'm going to draw the line there and say that I'm going to take her profession out of it. And I'm going to take that out of like, you know, judging this character. Because like what we're seeing is really an edited and spliced character, right? It's not the whole person. It shouldn't be a reflection of what she does professionally, especially because she's a therapist, right? And we're like, I'm not so sure I want to confide and trust all my feelings in this one messy girl who like tell everybody my secrets. I'm pretty sure that to be a competent professional therapist, she's not going to do that shit in real life. So like if the way I talk about Tori, for example, here on this podcast is more of just about the character, how she's being presented. And I wish that Survivor Reddit, Survivor Twitter, everybody online would be more along that same path where they don't judge the person as a whole, you know?
Yeah, I have a few things I have to say about that just because you don't know this about me, Stan, but I'm actually a licensed therapist myself. So I have a little bit on that. And I think that people who watch the show forget people are not their professions. I'm not, my whole persona is not licensed therapist. You wouldn't have known I was a licensed therapist unless I told you so. So that's not my persona. It's not hers either. And also Survivor and her going on there, it's not like she's going out there as like, I'm a therapist. It's my profession right now. No, this is like the time away. This is the escape from that. With how terrible it's been during COVID, let her freaking have her time. Like for me I would go do scare acting stuff and scream at people because that was my release. Let her have her release. It's not an easy job. Most of us leave the profession. You know, let her play the game the way she wants to. You know, the only thing I can say is I don't agree with her saying the narcissist thing. I think that, you know, I think she just speaks before she thinks and not realizing it. Because some people are like, well, she's diagnosing him. She's not diagnosing him. She's just saying he has the traits, which he could have the traits. We don't know. We're not out there. But at the end of the day, it's probably not very great to be saying that in your confessional for the world to see. But either way, I still think that the world needs to stop being so judgmental towards Survivor players. They're there to play a game, and I think a lot of these people that are so judgmental, I think they would be judged just as harshly as they're judging, if not harder. And that is my TED Talk for today. Thank you.
No, I think the gender of it all is also a pretty big factor, right? Like the fact that Tori's a woman. We just saw in Australian Survivor this past season that Sam Gash took so much hate from the Australian Survivor fan base for doing things that David Jennett did in All Stars, and he's celebrated as the best Australian Survivor of all time. And, you know, he's a dude and she's a woman and she gets all this hate, right? And it's funny where this is American Survivor where female villains have been glorified. Your Courtneys, your Parvatis, your Sandras to an extent, if you want to look at her as a villain, right? Your Abby Marias, or well, Abby got a lot of hate. But you know what I mean?
I was going to say that.
I was not saying.
Yeah, I had to pull myself back right there. But you know what I'm saying, right? Like, it's kind of weird how Tori's getting all this flack from Survivor Twitter or Survivor Reddit because of her profession, because she's a woman. But if, like, some other guy did this, I think people would be like, oh, hey, he's, like, part of the succession line of the Rob Cesarninos and Johnny Fairplays of the world.
Yes, because independent, strong women are scary to a lot of people and women who are okay speaking their mind and being their true authentic selves is usually terrifying to people. And I think that is sometimes we're really seeing Tori as her true authentic self. And I think part of that just rubs people the wrong way because sometimes it does come across as when you're setting boundaries, it comes across as being bitchy when sometimes it's not. You just don't like the fact that I set boundaries with you. And, you know, I'm seeing a lot of that with her. So, I mean, I do think the woman piece does play in a little bit. I don't always want to say that it always plays a factor, but I think sometimes, and it's not that anybody's purposely saying, well, because she's a woman. No, it's just an ingrained thing that we have in our society that will over time go away. But this is where we're at right now, and people need to start just recognizing it.
Right, for sure. And I mean, even I can somewhat relate to Tori. I mean, Stan's been, we're both part of the org community and everything. I played at one point in time with Stan, and I was a major villain. And then everyone afterwards gets to know me, not in-game Lauren, but after-game Lauren, and sees me for who I am as a person and go, oh, she's not the way she played the game, but we were playing a game.
Mm-hmm. I'd really like to know how all of these people who are so judgmental about like profession and how she acts, I'd love to know how they are during like a game of Monopoly or something. Like, are you all nice and fair? Like, this is the fair thing to do. You know what? I'll let you not pay rent as you cross my Broadway house here that I have 2 hotels on. Well, 1 hotel. I think that's all you can have. But still, You know, that's not how it works. No, give me your money. You're bankrupt now.
No, that's a very good point, right? Or kind of like in sports, when you're playing basketball, you're not going to let your opponent have a free shot at the rim.
No, right. Exactly. No, absolutely not. You just have to take all this into perspective. People want to judge people for different things because that's what everyone does. That's why people have Twitter. That's why they post things, because they want people to react to their comment, to what they say. Now, mind you, what people do say on Twitter, some stuff is funny. Like, I think it's hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. But at the end of the day, we do not need to be bringing these people down. Yes, they understood that they got casted for a reality television show. That part is true. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, unless they're an actual shitbag of a person and terrible, let them have their moment. Let them play out the game. And just know it's an edit. If we got to see all that raw footage of everything that they did in the game, you would probably think differently about so many of these people, even the people that are being highlighted as the quote-unquote heroes.
Mm-hmm. I think you're 100% correct. We always forget that they're being filmed 24 hours pretty much, almost. And we're only seeing a very, very small section of that. So we have to remember that there's so much we're not seeing. Yeah, we can judge the game by what we're seeing in this, 45 minutes that we're getting. But other than that, yeah.
I mean, if you're listening to a podcast like this, an hour and 15 minutes in, I hope you're not the type of person who'd be spewing all this hatred on social media. I'd like to trust that your listeners aren't those types of people. But just in case you wandered onto this podcast and you're the type to throw hate at a Tori and say that she has no right to be a licensed therapist for what she says, or at a Shan from last season, like, how dare you call yourself a pastor for playing the game of Survivor and all that stuff. You have to take the profession out of it. Sarah, you're absolutely correct. I just think that when you're someone like Tori, where you do say some stuff that's kind of out of line or kind of looks problematic because of the optics, that's more of, again, she's not really thinking before she says something, which we're all guilty of at one moment in time or another. It's just that the woman is starving like the rest of them are. And she's stressed, she's angry, she's sleep deprived. So it does make sense why she would say those things. Not that I necessarily agree with those things.
Yes. And it's okay not to agree sometimes and not tear someone down because you don't agree with them.
For sure.
I'm talking about to the people on Twitter.
Spot on right there. Sometimes on podcasts, I never know how we get to particular topics. And you know what? That's the thing about NSFW and all that. We talk about any and everything. And what else do you guys want to talk about from this episode? Because I think we've covered the majority of it, but are there any other singular points that stood out to you that you want to go through?
Oh, we haven't talked about the Marianne and Drea back and forth, like at Tribal. Like,
okay.
What was that?
I don't know what it was, because I think even Jeff was like, what am I watching?
Right? Like, I'm getting the sense that Marianne was part of the majority based on how she voted, or based on Omer wanting to keep Marianne around because his agenda was to keep all the Takus intact past this Lydia vote, right? So for Marianne, I don't know, it kind of tells me that Marianne isn't as socially aware, I guess, as she thinks she is, because she's like, oh yeah, Dre, yeah, like we're on the same page, right? But Dre at the same time is also really, really blunt. She's like, no, we're not.
Yeah, that was just awkward.
I just think Drea too was just not gonna let Marianne get the last word with that.
Yeah.
Drea's just, I'm gonna shut it down. You are not gonna win this, because Marianne's saying, we're saying the same thing, and Drea's like, no, we're not. Whereas in that moment, Drea could have just said, you know what, it's fine. Then they could have dropped it. Because if I'm Marianne, I'm going back to camp thinking, Drea, I don't know if we're vibing, if we're on the same level. Because that was, in my opinion, unnecessary. It didn't need to happen.
I mean, it's a level of pettiness I aspire for in my day-to-day life. But in the game of Survivor, where you're trying to keep everybody as stable as possible with your relationship with them, not something I would do.
We'll see how that factors into the next episode as well. And that's the thing. There's so many different people I want to see talk and interact with each other to see what page they're on, because that vote's very impactful, because a couple people's names got written down. Now, it wasn't as close as some other votes that we've seen in comparison to 41. That fake merge vote was extremely close. But this one, there was much more of the majority on the Lydia side, but at the same time, people still were voting in different directions.
Yeah, I just really think that the Roxroy thing was, something had to have happened there.
Yes.
Somebody must have messed up, probably Roxroy. But with the Marianne and Jonathan split, those 4 votes that went in those 2 directions, I'm getting the sense that someone was trying to break Taku up. It just didn't work out the way that probably Romeo wanted, because we saw Romeo trying to angle for Jonathan to be taken out, right? Because he was telling Marianne, or was it Tori or somebody, like, we're the little people. We got to go after the big, strong guy. So, like, he was making a show out of it. So
yeah.
I really feel like that was a Romeo plan that blew up in his face.
It's a good possibility.
That's what I'm saying. We're going to see what happens. I'm very, very excited to see how this season unfolds. Not predictable in any sort of the matter in comparison to what we've seen in previous ones. So with that, Stan, do you have any last thoughts on the episode, predictions for what we could see throughout the rest of the season? What do you have for us?
Well, for starters, I love the fact that Australian Survivor's done, because now I can focus all my efforts on just really enjoying 42 and getting to know these people. Like, it feels like the right time to finally get super invested in each of their fates, right? Like at the final 11. So that's really great. I'm going to echo something we've said on this podcast, where it's an open game right now. I don't think anybody has a clear-cut path to the end, which is great. But I'm going to keep rooting for my guy High and hope that, he's one of the three at the end. And I hope that nobody gets advantage getting out of there, because there are still all these idols and advantages running around. And my biggest fear is that someone's game blows up in smoke at the final 6 just because they get advantage getting. So I hope that that's an unfounded fear and that we get a relatively idol-free post-merge like we did in 41.
Yeah, that would be nice to see. It was nice to see the actual gameplay and not just advantages being the reason that people stay or go. So,
for sure, I'm very excited to see how it unfolds. I know it's going to be chaotic. There's going to be craziness. People are going to be hurt, and we could see maybe a bit of jury. I have no idea. I always look forward to the final tribal council just to see people's reactions on people's responses to what they have for them. But Stan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You were such a delight. I always love hearing your insight. You're so knowledgeable about the game of Survivor. And also, where can people find you?
If you love professional wrestling or sports entertainment, whatever you want to call it, I'm on the WWE Network as one of the Filipino commentators. So if you're Filipino or you understand Tagalog, go on the WWE Network and click on the Tagalog audio for the monthly premium live events. You can also catch my podcasts. I've got one about being a radio personality and where that career has taken me to date. It's called On Deck with Stan C. You can find that on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your pods. I also have another one called the Wrestling Podcast, where, of course, we talk about wrestling. But if you want to just chat with me about Survivor, the way Lauren and I have been chatting about Survivor for the past year and a half, you can hit me up at _StanC, that's STANSY, on Twitter and on Instagram. And Lauren, Sarah, thank you so much for having me on Survivor Ladies Night. I made sure to wear pink for you two today.
Thank you. I did.
And it's just such a blast. It was really worth waking up extra early on a Tuesday morning.
Oh, thank you so much. And we are so happy that you were able to come and join us today. So, and with that, NSFW has so much more to offer throughout the week. So on Wednesdays, we usually have Johnny and Alex and Matt do the podcast of the after show of the episode. We also have Brent and Bobby that cover Big Brother. And then we also have Alex Rubino and Dan Monchel who they do like a deep dive throughout the week. Sometimes have a guest. You have us on Mondays. And my show will be coming back in the future. I promise you all, The Mind After the Game, where I interview Survivor players on their experience in the game, outside the game, and of course, after the game.
Yeah. And with that, if you like everything that we're doing here, become a patron. Go to adfreensfw.com. Johnny and Matt, they do a Q&A where they will answer literally any and everything. It's a great community. That's where you meet so many awesome people, and people become lifelong friends from it. So if you want to check us out there, definitely give it a look. And you never know what could happen. You can end up podcasting or jumping on and getting to go on a Q&A with Johnny and Matt and interacting with them as well. And with that, everyone, take care. Good night.
And for more reality NSFW content, visit adfreensfw.com.